There is a lot of confusion out there in the world about what we appraisers are supposed to be doing. Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac asking for support for adjustments, asking for specifically support for market adjustments, for differences in marketing, going on in your local market. They want to see time adjustments where they're required. The question is, how do you do that? Do you have to build your own spreadsheet? That's a viable option. Do you have to, do it in a specific way? You've seen this example from Fannie Mae a couple of weeks ago where they had this crazy looking graph with all these different movements on it. Here's the thing. Do not freak out. This is well within your wheelhouse. Stick with me. I'm going to speak with Matthew Hyatt from True Footage to address this very issue.
LIA Administrators and Insurance Services, serving valuation professionals since 1978. We provide E&O insurance with a commitment to superior customer service, outstanding liability education, and unmatched claim defense. Explore our exclusive appraiser liability education by Peter Christensen and cost-effective seminars designed to foster your growth. Our underwriters, with an average of 26 years of experience each, are dedicated to supporting appraisers. Visit liability.com to discover how LIA can safeguard your business. You're listening to the Appraisal Buzzcast with your host, Hal Humphreys.
Welcome back, everybody. Well, we have a topic today that every appraiser should know about if they've completed an appraisal in the past week. And if you don't know what we're talking about, you're going to want to pay attention before you complete your next appraisal. The GSEs have a new time adjustment requirement that went into effect on February 4th. Let me bring in Hal, and let's talk about it quickly before we bring in our guest. Hey, Hal, how are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. Jim Morrison, how are you today?
I'm great. Well, there's a new GSE requirement, and we brought in Matthew Hyatt from True Footage to talk about what appraisers need to be doing with these changes before they complete their next appraisal. Hey, Matthew.
Hey, guys. How you doing today?
Doing great, Matthew. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today. There's a lot of curiosity, confusion, trepidation, whatever you want to call it out there in appraisal land about how do we deal with these new GSE requirements. And I'm excited to get your take on that. Before we get started, can you share just a little bit about your background in this industry? How did you get into this world of real estate appraisal?
Yeah. So again, thanks for having me on today. So, a little bit about me. I started my appraiser journey about 25 years ago. It was a part-time job, as a summer job that I was told by my parents to go get while I wasn't playing sports, and had a family friend who was an appraiser. And I started an old late 1800s Victorian home, lugging boxes of banker boxes from the basement upstairs to be scanned and shredded. And from there, just took an interest, asked a lot of questions, started doing data entry for guys on the team, started learning how to teach them software. I went to early a la mode conventions in New York and taught guys how to do it on the Palm Pilot. That's showing you how long ago this has been a little bit. But and then when I went away to college, kept trying to type this stuff remotely. So I was overnighting zip disk from my dorm room in Norman, Oklahoma, at the University of Oklahoma, and basically being a data analyst and trying to type and clean sketches and clean pictures for guys. And then my wife is a Dallas girl, and I now live in Dallas, so you know who runs my household. And I jumped right back into it. And I worked for a few firms around here before starting my own. Did that for about 7 years, and then joined True Footage about 3 years ago. Presently act as a regional manager. I coach, mentor, try to support appraisers across the country. And then I work with our tech team to try to see if we can build better tools that help guys or gals, do the job a little bit more efficiently or at a higher quality level.
Awesome.
Involved with a bunch of organizations, ATA, AGA, the National Association of Appraisers, the Appraisal Institute, have my SRA, and try to be as involved as I can be.
I love it. All right, so let's just dive right in. The GSE's new policy is officially in effect by the time this podcast drops. It's going to require some more documentation from appraisers in their appraisal process. If you're looking for the link, if you're an appraiser out there and you haven't heard about this, if you go to singlefamily.fanniemae.com media 40241 display, that will get you to the announcement about this new requirement. We'll include the link underneath this in the description. You can just click on it right there and go there. Matthew, give us a quick rundown of what's happening and what appraisers need to know.
Yeah, so like you said, the announcement came out in November, just kind of roll to us right now. And a few little things. And I mean, to me, I didn't feel as much of the angst that everybody else felt, but I get why we're feeling it. But there's the reaction to language, right? So we have to make sure we're being fact-based. We have to make sure that the market trends are based on 12-month trends. So that checkbox on the 1004 form on the front page, they made it really clear, a minimum of a 12-month trend. We're no longer leaving that, a little bit up to the appraiser's determination. The clarification of how we choose comparables, but mainly around the definitions of market area and neighborhoods. Again, giving a little bit more direction and clarity, I think, to that. The big one, again, going on that 12-month trend was also the separation of the 12-month trend on the front page to how you adjust your comparables within the report. So, and I think for so long with the old 1004 MC form that was retired, that never went away, and that correlation to page 1 and page 2, 3, whatever of our reports, we kept feeling that had to be very linear and connected. And they've made that really clear that that's not the case. You can have a trend on page 1 that differentiates from your trend that you're adjusting in your reports. I take this as a giant advantage to us as appraisers, because I always felt like we were trying to push ourselves into a square peg round hole problem where, yeah, my market went up 12 months, but it has stabilized over the last 3. Or I dealt with seasonality here in Dallas all the time. Like that was very normalized to me, that spring and summer was where the market moved, and fall and winter was where it slowed down. And we didn't adjust market change based on certain timelines. So that's, my kind of quick summarized take on it is just that, and then it opens up that door to the nonlinear thing. And I think that's the one that's giving everybody the most heartburn. That illustration that went out there, that again is not required. It's been clarified now many, many times over, but we still like to pick on that illustration. To me, the illustration is an idea. It's not what we have to do. You can have 5 sales in a report, 1 up, 1 down, and a few that just are completely stable. And it's completely up to us to explain that to our reader and make our reports credible and understood to the reader.
I mean, at the end of the day, it goes back to the old idea of tell us what you did, tell us why you did it, and tell us why it matters. And with those rules in place, with that kind of general framework in place, appraisers have some leeway to say, hey, the global market in this area over the past year has done this. However, I've got some different indications for different, sales in this grid and in this analysis to kind of fine tune that. And I think that's a really good thing.
100%. I think honestly, the way this requirement gets put on the lender as well. I know we look at it from our vantage point of, oh my God, it's more work for us. It's a lot more work for the lender, and it's going to require that they actually read our reports, which I hear is a common thing we're frustrated about a lot of times. They didn't read my comments. Well, they're basically being told they have to, because we might contradict ourselves on different parts of the report, explaining what a market's doing holistically or on a more micro or macro component. So I think that's a huge advantage to us, and honestly might make our jobs a little bit easier despite the need to show a little bit more work.
Yeah, and all right, so I'm just going to take a real quick second here before we continue with the interview and just say, for appraisers out there in the world that want to know how to get your head around analyzing the market, putting together graphs that make sense, supporting your adjustments for time-based adjustments, we got a couple of things for you at Appraiser Learning. You can check out our online live Zoom courses. We've got a couple of courses coming up in the next few months. Believe it or not, creating credible and supportable adjustments. It's a live Zoom class. We've got several courses coming up. Creating formulas that work. That is another live Zoom class. We have a professional development webinar called Market Indexing for Real Estate Appraisers. That's available through Appraiser Learning. Matthew, if appraisers don't know how to do this or haven't been doing this, how are they supposed to figure this out?
So like you said, I mean, there's a lot of class opportunities. So I've been very excited to see that, because I think we've seen a lot of new CE classes and things hitting the market because around this topic. So there's so many different ways. Obviously, there's a lot of software providers, and I'm going to shamelessly plug one that I'm very passionate about because I've worked on, and there's many others that compete with us. But we have created a new software that just dropped recently called TrueTracks. And TrueTracks is more or less a machine learning type software that is taking years and years of data and behind the scenes adjusting for what the differences are and trying to show the appraiser, hey, like this is how your market actually moves. And it's taking the commonality of market features, your size, your home, your size, your lot, your bedrooms, your bathrooms, so on and so forth. And it's telling you how on price trends, how they are correlating. Because part of the market area thing that the GSEs came out with was that your market area isn't just this linear 1 mile circle that we all kind of, I have a 1 mile radius, I won't go beyond it. No, there's submarkets, that pockets that act very similarly to one another, and having the ability to have a software or a machine learning type, tool showing you where those pockets are. Then at the same time, being able to see the market on a linear component, on a non-linear component, and you as the appraiser be able to look at a tool and say, hey, I'm going to reconcile what this market is with my local area knowledge and expertise. It's not that the tool is going to tell you this is the answer. There is, I think we know that with adjustment support and everything. Like, there's no answer. It's just what can we support, what is credible, and what do we have that we can show a reader or end user in real time. So with all that said, you can go and we can definitely talk about building Excel spreadsheets and doing all this manually, and there's no shame in any of that. But we also have a culture of kind of fee suppression and time suppression, and we're being asked to do more for less and faster. So our mission was to try to put a tool in place that would allow appraisers to do just that, be able to do a high level analysis, increase the quality of the report, but do it in a time that isn't going to, break your dollar per hour and kind of hurt you as a business user. So, we have, again, the TrueTracks tool for the market that's going to be available as of the recording of this. It will be 45% of markets early March or sometime in March. We're going to be able to be about 85, I believe, to 90+% of all MLS markets. So we're really excited about that because we hear the rural appraisers. We hear the problem of, I don't have a tool. It doesn't work with my MLS. Or how do I do this? There's not enough data. And we want to try to solve that problem, being able to take historical data and adjust it coming forward to extrapolate trends. We can solve some of that problem. Will it be perfect in a rural market? No, never will be, but we'll do our best.
One of the things I love about what you just said is, I think a lot of times we as appraisers, we're looking for a tool that will give us the answer. And as you said, there is no answer, quote unquote answer. There are indications from the market. There's data that we can gather and extrapolate some information from. But at the end of the day, it is our job as real estate appraisers to analyze that information and turn it into intelligence that our clients can use. I watched a TED Talk a couple of months ago by a young lady named Trisha Wang, and she talks about the difference between big data and what she calls thick data. And she approaches it from the attitude of a cultural anthropologist. And the example she gives is Nokia. She did some work with Nokia back in the day, and they had all this big data that informed them on how users use cell phones. And their big data set was telling them that people wanted cheaper, simpler cell phones. And what she found by analyzing a very small market in a specific location was people were saving up 2 and 3 months worth of salary to buy a smartphone that was not showing up on the big data set. So I think appraisers kind of fit that role of a cultural anthropologist. We take this big data set, we look at it, we analyze it, and then we bring our knowledge of the micro market, of the market where we work, and apply our judgment, which is informed by, as you said, experience and our knowledge of what goes on in the market, with the big data set and make sense out of it. Does that make sense?
100%. And I think that a lot of the appraisal population, for one, wants to discredit big data a lot of times because we feel threatened by it. And I understand it. We've seen, I'm not going to name any of them, but we've seen big major data companies try to do something and not do very well with it. But I do think, again, this whole thing starts because how HPIs were performing versus the lack of appraisers making market change adjustments. And I think Danny said it on one podcast about, I think 93% of reports were not having market conditions adequately addressed. Lyle at Fannie Mae said a very similar number. I think it was about 91%. So it is consistency along a long period of time. We need to look at big data and, like you said, tie it to the local data. And some of it isn't, it is going to be that feel, that 30 years of doing something in a market that people have, but we got to stop trying to live on what I know and be able to say, hey, I can show you this big, I can show you this small, but I'm going to tie it together and tell you what's really happening. And like that's, I think, a unique opportunity for us in this time and, in valuation, because I think we've been railroaded and kind of discredited in certain parts. And this is a great part to reestablish ourselves and make us realize that how important we are to the process.
Yeah, and again, like you said, big data is a very useful tool. When we have thousands, millions of data points to work with, that's a really good tool, but it's nothing more than a tool. And appraisers bring value to the table by taking these tools, understanding them, and then applying their specific knowledge to those data sets and drawing conclusions that are, again, we're looking for support for what we did. Tell us what you did, why you did it, and what it means. Matthew, let me ask you this. Is there anything else appraisers need to do before submitting their next appraisal?
Yeah, I mean, I think the big thing right now is, so obviously right now, we need to make sure we have support for market conditions more than ever. What we did in the past, if we weren't doing it to the degree it's required, we have to get there. So you have to be prepared to show your work. If you want to leverage a tool like TrueTrax or Spark, fantastic. If there's a competitor or a class that can teach you to do it in a different manner, by all means do it. But we have to have that in reports. We have to be prepared to show charts, not that one chart, but some kind of charts or some kind of data to support your conclusions. And then I think the biggest thing we need to be doing is also thinking ahead personally. This is my thought process of, it's not going to stop here. Market conditions is the first adjustment that's going to be to this point. I think we need to be thinking about this on any adjustment we make in the report. We have to have data-driven, market-supported adjustments, no longer just saying paired sales. Show your paired sales, explain your paired sales, do whatever other approvable methods you want to do. But I think that as practitioners, we have to take this opportunity in every report now, realize there's an opportunity to show quality. There's an opportunity to stand out and elevate the standard. And I think we need to all, and every appraisal we do from this day forward, be mindful of that and just relish the opportunity to try to create relevance again.
I love it. I love it. I ran across a T-shirt the other day that I wanted to buy and give to a couple of people. That the T-shirt is a black T-shirt. It's got white sans serif lettering on it. It says, "That wasn't very data-driven of you." That's it. That's all it says. And I think it's a great T-shirt for us to have as appraisers, to remind ourselves to be data-driven in the things we do. Matthew, thank you so much for being here. I want to do one thing. I want to take a real quick break and hear from one of our sponsors, and we'll be right back.
Are you ready to take your career in real estate appraisal to the next level? Join the Appraisal Institute, your go-to source for expert insights, industry trends, and the latest updates from the world of valuation. Whether you're an experienced appraiser or just starting out, they bring you industry resources, classes, and all the knowledge you need to stay ahead. Join today and be part of a community that's shaping the future of the appraisal profession. Visit appraisalinstitute.org to learn more and become a member.
Welcome back, everybody. You're listening to the Appraisal Buzzcast. I'm Hal Humphreys, your host. I'm joined today by Matthew Hyatt of True Footage. We've been talking about the new requirement from the GSEs to show your work, show your adjustments, have adjustments, and support for time adjustments. Matthew, thank you so much for taking the time to be here and walk through some of these things with us. Matthew, Jim Morrison does this thing to me, and I think he does it just to trip me up, but he has this anonymous appraiser question that he likes to throw at us. Jim Morrison, do we have one of these trick questions that you're going to try and trip Matthew and me up with?
We do. And if anybody has any questions for future guests, reach out to us at comments@appraisalbuzz.com. This is, I think, an interesting one. It says, appraising a site improved by a small office building. The highest and best use is a redevelopment of the site for apartments and demolition of the existing building. The site is already approved and permitted for 24 units. The owners donated the office building, just the building, to the fire department, who's using it for 2 months for training purposes. Once they're done, they're burning it down, and construction will begin in about 2 months. So the intended use is to provide a value for the building for tax reporting to the IRS. By all metrics, the building has a value of 0 because they're getting ready to burn it down. The subject is worth $500,000 as an office site versus $750,000 or more as a permitted apartment development site. Assuming the client will be upset and ask for a refund, how do I approach this situation? It took me about a week's worth of work to come to these conclusions, and I do think I deserve to be paid, in part, even if the client doesn't want to hear the report. I spent a lot of time reading Pub 561 and looking at office permitted land comparables to make sure that the highest and best use was a redevelopment.
Matthew.
That's a tough one. Yeah, so being, I'm going to focus more on the customer service side of it. That's where my head goes. I'm more the residential driven. So, the big thing here to me is you've identified the issue. You know that your client's going to be unhappy. And I always relish customer service opportunities and being able to lean into a client and explain, hey, this is what I did. This is the amount of time I have into it. Here are my options of what I can deliver to you. You might not like what I'm about to tell you. We can potentially, like I think he said, wanting to be paid potentially in part, and be able to kind of say, hey, for what I know at this point, this is my price to kind of walk away and not waste your time and energy. Or I can move forward and deliver you the report, knowing that I have to require due diligence to do what's credible and what's accurate. And in this particular case, as a building that apparently doesn't have any value. There is some bit of an interim use thing that I wonder, but I don't know. That's a little bit outside of my area of expertise.
I like that answer. I think what I would add to that is, look, as real estate appraisers, our job always starts with defining the problem. Part of defining the problem is working your way through the highest best use and finding out what is this thing we're dealing with. At the end of the day, if you've done the work and you have concluded that the highest best use is, in fact, to redevelop the site, then that's what the highest and best use is. I would give very clear explanation to my clients, tell them what your findings are, tell them all the research you did. You might discuss a scope of work change to address this in a different way. As far as your client paying you for your time, one of the things I've noticed is, and it sounds like you're dealing in more of a commercial space than a single-family residential space. Most of the clients I work with on the commercial side of things, they totally understand a change in scope of work due to something like this. So I don't think it's going to be as difficult a conversation as you think it is. But at the end of the day, highest best use is highest best use. And just talk to your client, tell them what you found, and going back to my mantra of, what did you do? Why did you do it? And what does it mean? And I think at the end of the day, your client is going to be happy with the fact that you've done the work of a professional real estate appraiser and come back with a really informed idea of how to move forward from this point. And, Matthew, tell me, I'm thinking about this from an IRS standpoint. A lot of times people, when they're looking at tax appraisal issues for real estate taxes or for IRS purposes, a lot of people are looking to, people out there in the market are looking to have a lower value. But there are times when you're dealing with IRS process where you actually want the value to be spot on, because you may be looking at resetting a basis for future tax burdens. And if you end up with a higher tax basis, then later on, you're not paying as much in capital gains if you sell the thing. So I think there are a lot of things to this question to think about. But at the end of the day, my appraiser friends out there, if you run across a situation like this, be very clear about what you've done, why you did it, and what it means for your client. I think they'll appreciate you for that.
I agree.
Okay, Matthew, thank you. Jim Morrison, do we have anything else we need to cover today?
No, that was a great response. Matthew, thank you so much for joining us. I will say we'll put some links below for the courses that Hal talked about on appraiser learning. And we have an upcoming webinar sponsored by True Footage and the Appraisal Buzz, where we'll dive into the true tracks that Matthew talked about. So you'll get to actually see how it works, which will be great. So we'll include the link for that in the description as well.
Matthew, I cannot wait to sit in on that webinar and see what you guys have to say. That's going to be really fun.
Paul Rowe does a fantastic job presenting it, and he's been involved with it from the very jump. So anyone who gets the chance to jump in, I recommend it. It's a fun piece of software.
Okay. If we have nothing else for Jim Morrison and Matthew Hyatt, I'm Hal Humphreys, and that is your Appraisal Buzzcast for this week.